Hello, everybody. Welcome to the official, actually after we've passed the official halfway point of the semester. So I hope that you are all continuing to persevere. I know it's time to take a deep breath and just take a little bit of a break. But I do want to note that in the almost 10 years that I have been here and working in this program, I am genuinely impressed with the level of rigor, critical thinking that I am seeing in your weekly discussion posts and in your work so far. It makes me optimistic for healthcare and especially healthcare delivery within New York State. And please know that, again, for those of you, I spoke to most of you one-on-one early in the semester. I genuinely enjoy those conversations and getting to know you. And please know that I'm always here as a sounding board if you're working on something, whether it's a leadership challenge, personnel challenge, personal growth and development. I'm here. You have a resource and a support system here at Oswego. So I also want to take a moment to really give you my genuine appreciation for the course feedback. It is not enough to just preach and coach others on continuous process improvement, but not practice it yourself. For me, this is a practice that I try to do each semester. And sometimes the feedback is a little bit different. So, but I'd like to, the way I do this is I try to boil down the common themes by looking at the number of responses. So we had 17 people respond to the survey. And so I kind of bumped up the top 4 in terms of frequency that came out from things that you would like to see me do differently in the course. So the first thing is a weekly Zoom session. So a number of you had said, you're looking for engagement in the course. I've tried doing this a couple of semesters ago, and unfortunately was typically the only one on the call. So I stopped doing it. That being said, I think we're in a little bit of a different situation now in terms of us kind of craving that level of connection. So I will definitely give this another shot. So instead of putting an hour on the calendar, I'm only going to make it 30 minutes. If the discussion is, if it's going well, people are in flow, you want to keep doing it, we can definitely stay on the call for longer than that. For those of you that join the weekly Zoom session, I will give you credit for the discussion response. I know that is probably not as much as you would hope for. And I was considering, I know some of you had mentioned it would be great if you could not do this discussion if you attended the weekly Zoom session. I think I'm open to that concept. The only reason I'm hesitant right now is because, especially in these upcoming discussions, I don't use them for an engagement purpose. I really kind of use them for deep reflection on content. And it gives me an opportunity to really understand kind of how you're thinking about things and kind of giving you some guidance and feedback on that. So I don't want to miss the opportunity for you to practice on some of those things. So I'm still trying to figure that out. But for now, absolutely for the discussion response. So what I'll do is when I send out the announcement, I will also include a doodle poll so that we can kind of see what days or times are going to be best for most of you. And if we find that there is kind of like a 50-50 split in terms of availability and demand for certain days, I can try to do a couple different days. But ideally, I'd like to be able to get as many people together at once as possible, especially given my experience in that I don't always get the best turnout at these sessions. So, but we'll see. We'll use the scientific method and iterate our way there. One of the other points of feedback was inclusion of case studies and some peer-reviewed articles. So I will, for the content coming up in the next few weeks, over the course of the next week, I'll kind of go through and see if I can include whether they are specific scientific academic articles, if there are sort of white papers on what different health systems have been doing, or if they're even small videos. I'll try to go through and incorporate some more of those as well. A number of you also noted that that the discussions are really time consuming. And so I have noticed this too. And I think this is partially where I've also been really impressed at how much you are all putting into the discussion posts, which I genuinely appreciate. They don't necessarily have to be that long though. I think you can generally answer those discussion posts in about 500 words, which are a couple paragraphs. So if we take population health, for example, I'm going through it, the things that I'm looking for are, did you very specifically identify the population of interest? Did you identify kind of the compelling argument for why that's important from a community health standpoint? Did you go through identify an intervention or two and identify the metrics that you would use to determine whether or not you were making progress for that specific population? Right. So if you're going through this, I would practice, trying to be as concise as possible and hitting those and making sure that you're pulling in some of those resources to support your position. But it definitely does not need to be, an opinion piece that would be published somewhere. I love it. I genuinely do enjoy it. But I don't want you to write for the sake of writing, right? I want to focus on the content and making sure that you're understanding that. So the last piece was some feedback on group work. Now, this is where I have had this in the past, and I always get kind of two very different opinions on group work. There's one camp that says, yes, we want engagement. We want to be able to know our, other people in the program and create these relationships and networks. And there's another camp that says, we are already so stretched with work and family obligations. Please don't put me in another group. So I want to play around with this. I'm not going to be changing anything in the syllabus with respect to group work at this point in the semester, but I do want to think about, is there a way, whether it's a forum or a chat room, right? Some sort of social media, and somebody did suggest this, where it would be open, where we could connect. Maybe it's on LinkedIn. I'm not sure if we can create a LinkedIn chat group. That way we can connect professionally and also kind of create a forum where you all can ask questions to one another or message one another kind of outside of Blackboard. So if you have specific thoughts or ideas on that, please email me, because this is something that I do want to play around with a little bit. Hopefully we can work on the engagement and getting to know others in the class a little bit through those weekly Zoom sessions, but I'm definitely open to thinking about what this other kind of, whether it's again a social media platform or what is another way that I'm not currently thinking about to get individuals in the class to connect. So last but not least, I will include this in the announcement as well, all of the upcoming due dates. So we've got the upcoming 2 discussions. So I believe it's discussion 5 and 6. So for the next 2 lean modules. And then for, you also have an upcoming assignment due November 1st. I am going to make the due date for all of these assignments November 1st. My reasoning for that is that I want to give you time to go to Gemba, which is what I'm going to be talking about here in just a moment. I also want to give you a little bit of time to play with data visualization. I had already kind of worked in a lot of extra time into the syllabus to make sure that you had time and space to work on the final research paper at the end of the semester. So take your time with these. I will grade them as they come in. So I won't leave that all until November 1st. If you want to, please submit them earlier than that. I will grade them. But I also, for those of you, especially that are trying to figure out meaningful ways to go to Gemba, I don't want you to be racing for a deadline. I'd rather you find an opportunity to have a really meaningful experience in doing that. So if you have questions or concerns with that, please just shoot me an email, but hopefully this will give you a little bit of a breather here too after the midterm. Again, most of you I know are being flexed into different areas because of resource constraints. So again, if you have any questions, please let me know. But let's get to the content for this week. So I have another video in this module where I talk about lean thinking, kind of the history of operational excellence and for me, why lean is so important. And we see that lean too is also being leveraged. I think historically, a lot of people, especially in healthcare, are a little bit hesitant because it seems like a very manufacturing oriented management philosophy. That is, I think, couldn't be further from the truth. While there are a lot of technical aspects of how we think about value stream mapping and creating one piece flow that maybe don't as readily apply to service industries or healthcare, the primary tenets of using the scientific method to improve, coaching individuals, and for me, one of the biggest teachings that is used in lean that I think we absolutely need to leverage more as healthcare leaders is this concept of Gemba. So Gemba can be, you might see it either written either way with an M or an N. It's a Japanese term that literally means the actual place. So if you were a reporter, the Gemba would be the crime scene, right? You're going to go to Gemba to see what happened. You're going to be understanding exactly, being able to see everything that took place. From a lean standpoint, this is used to talk about where value is created. This is usually at the bedside. This is in the operating room. This is sitting at the nurse's station where you're inputting information or scanning paperwork, whatever it may be. We have a tendency, especially in healthcare and in leadership positions, where there are 1,000,001 things on your plate that you can't get through, and we are constantly firefighting, that we rely on heuristics. to get through the day, right? Heuristics are assumptions that we make about the work because we generally have a pretty good idea of how things work. So we make decisions without actually going to Gemba. Now, this is your practice for this week. I want you all to identify an area. This could be somebody, a department or an individual that you work with, where either you really are kind of maybe frustrated, right? If we think about silos in healthcare in terms of if you are receiving paperwork with incorrect information on it, instead of just getting frustrated, like, why can't these people do the work the right way? And going and seeing and sitting with them. Now, this is a practice that requires a lot of preparation. So I'm going to talk through that in just a moment. But before I get to that, for this week's discussion, I want you to do this as a practice this week, next week, whenever you can find it before November 1st. Please do not refer to something that you have seen in the past or when you have gone to Gemba in the past. This is about creating a daily practice of going to Gemba. So there's an old saying in Toyota that all managers should have to wash their hands at least 3 times a day. Now, the kind of reasoning for that is that back in the 80s and 90s, as production was ramping up and as they were expanding globally, especially in the United States, the expectation was always and still is that managers will go and be so intimately involved on the line where the work is taking place that they literally have to go and wash their hands 3 times a day. Now, think about what that means for the work that you're doing. How can you go and wash your hands 3 times a day, right? How can you actually go and sit with somebody else to see where the value is being created, not just in your group or, with in your clinical specialty, but how do you take a systems perspective and go and see what's happening maybe in another department, in imaging, in billing, with somebody in revenue cycle, right? There are so many opportunities for us to go to Gemba. Not only will that make you a better leader because you will understand kind of the system, the obstacles that are there, and opportunities obviously for improvement, but it will make you a better leader. It will make you a more compassionate and supportive leader, and that is the goal. You are in this course and in this program because you have a vision you want to contribute to better healthcare delivery. We all want that change. It requires leaders who have these capabilities and who are willing to not just rely on heuristics and their assumptions, but who are humble enough to go and actually sit and show respect for their teammates and learn about what they're doing and what their obstacles are. That is your challenge for this week. Again, take your time with it. It's not going to be due on Monday, but this is going to be your challenge. Now, when you go to Gemba, one of the phrases that we often use, and I do this when I do coaching and consulting work with leaders, is always reinforcing this notion of go see, ask why, show respect. When you go to Gemba, it is very, very important to not go with a chip on your shoulder. And for a lot of us that have been dealing with things that don't work correctly, or people who maybe weren't receptive or had, maybe not the best emotional intelligence in terms of working with others, this is absolutely one of the most challenging things that you can do. So the first thing, go see. Make sure that you have an opportunity to really go where the value is created. This is not meeting with somebody and kind of talking about it. Again, this is where maybe it's a little bit challenging now for those of you that are working remotely. It may have to result in just a Zoom call with somebody to understand their obstacles and their challenges. But when possible, actually go and sit with them and see where that value is being created and see what their work looks like. But don't just show up unannounced, right? Kind of make sure you give them a heads up and say, hey, I'm really interested in understanding this, so that I can be a better partner. You can always use this class as kind of a get out of jail free card to say, hey, I have to do this thing for class. So that it's not, there's not that added kind of pressure and trying to, go in and explain that you're not going in to just observe and to correct, because that is not what the intent is here. The intent is truly to just go and understand. So typically there's another phrase that is commonly used in Toyota called stand in circle. So what some of the old executives would do is with their management team, they would take a piece of chalk out on the production floor and they would draw a circle and they would have that manager stand there for a couple of hours, standing in the circle, literally to just observe. It is your job to truly understand how the work is flowing, where value is created, and where those obstacles are. Your job as a leader is not to identify the problem solution, though. It's not. And we are all hardwired to do that. That's how we were raised. That's the US educational system, is there's a right answer and you are rewarded for finding it. A good leader is not going to solve all the problems. A good leader is going to support the people doing the work to remove obstacles and help develop and coach those individuals to problem solve themselves. That is how we create a learning culture. So when you actually go to observe, asking why. So this is also an important clarification. We don't just go in and ask why to say, why are you doing it like that, right? Like, that doesn't make any sense. We don't want to go in with that. Asking why just literally refers to why is this process exist in the first place? What truly is the purpose of the process? What are your outcomes and what are you trying to accomplish, right? And what are the things that maybe get in the way of you being able to do that? And when we go there, of course, we always have to show respect for the person who's doing the work. Again, I talk about kind of the history of lean and operations management as a discipline in my video within the module, and talk a little bit about Frederick Taylor versus Lillian Gilbreth, who kind of brought in that industrial and organizational psychology component. We don't want to go in there and make people feel uncomfortable. We want to go in there and we want to present ourselves as leaders that genuinely care about the individual, the work that they're doing, and how we can all collectively get better. Now, that may sound fluffy and like, okay, sure, that sounds great on paper, but that's not how things work. It is a practice, and it is how you are going to become a better leader. And this discussion this week is going to be a practice for you. It is not easy, and I am here as a support if you want to kind of talk through some of the challenges that you anticipate you might have in doing that. So we can also, a phrase that's commonly used is going on a Gemba walk. So again, a few of the things we want to keep in mind when we go to Gemba is to observe, don't correct. It is not your role to go in and tell somebody else how to do their job correctly. It is really, again, about you understanding and listening to their challenges and observing the workflow. We also want to focus on what's working in the process. Like, what are the things that are actually going well, right? Not just all about the things that are going wrong, because it can easily turn into an event session. And so there's also a little bit of some leadership development that you'll have to practice in kind of steering away from just the venting session, but also being able to pull in what's working well. Again, we want to seek to understand, okay, why are you doing the work in this way? What is the underlying purpose? And then again, what are some of the obstacles that get in the way? And that is kind of the subtracting value. So instead of always going to, as we kind of take what's called a value stream perspective, right? If we look at it from an entire system level and how the patient experience is flowing through different departments, we don't only want to kind of go in and have a focus on those, what we call value adding activities. We also want to understand where is all the waste and waiting and rework happening in between those steps. Because if we can truly understand how much and how often that's happening, that whether it's the patient waiting, whether it's rework on paperwork or delays for whatever reason, if we can get to the heart of why those things are happening and start to make just little tweaks, working with the teams to think about what things could we do to improve this. This is where, again, I've been reiterating this entire semester, the scientific method comes into play. We see it with population health. We need a very clear hypothesis about what we think is going to happen. We need a test of change that's very clear. And we need metrics that we're going to be able to use to track it and monitor whether or not it's working or not. And if it's not, don't keep it in place. We want to adjust and continuously kind of refine our understanding and run through that scientific method cycle again. So this again is your challenge for this week and your development as a leader. So we want to first and foremost respect people, respect everybody that we work with. Everybody comes into work wanting to do a good job, right? The system is generally broken and we need to focus on how we can improve the system and how we can work together to fix that. We need to rely on the capabilities of the people that we work with. We need to understand their strengths, their technical strengths, their character strengths. And when we can do that, we're in a better position to be able to develop people and challenge them. So this is where I'm going to also loop back into Adam Grant, who is again kind of this, the organizational psychologist who's happened to go mainstream. He just released his most recent TED Talk on how to stop languishing and start finding flow. Flow is this concept that was pioneered by a psychologist named Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, and he also has another TED Talk about genuine, when we see people who are performing at peak levels, whether they're musicians or artists or athletes or executives, right? When people who have had tremendous amount of success, there's this kind of underlying component that's referred to as flow. And generally, when we look at the work that we're doing, we can kind of be on two ends of the spectrum. We can kind of just be bored and not challenged. If we're challenged too much, we've got a lot of anxiety, but there's a sweet spot in there where somebody recognizes and we recognize that there is something meaningful in the work that we're doing, that we are developing mastery, and we have support with leadership teams that are really helping us kind of mindfully think through the work that we're doing and how we can constantly get better. It's this concept of flow, and Adam Grant talks about it in his latest TED Talk, which I will be including in the announcement this week. So that's a lot to take in. Again, I am here if you want to talk through how to go to Gemba, how to navigate some of these challenging situations, and how to truly present yourself as an open and humble leader and use kind of appreciative inquiry questions to go in and truly understand the work of those that work in the system with us. If we can do that, again, not only are we going to find opportunities to improve, we are going to develop as leaders, and we are going to help grow the people that we work with. As always, I hope you have a wonderful week and reach out if you have any questions.